We see Logan Brown on TV as the calm, composed, and responsible oldest son. But would you believe that Logan once screamed at his father Kody, saying, "Enough is enough"? Rumor has it that around season 5 or 6, a monumental incident occurred that was deliberately left on the cutting room floor. A report from someone claiming to have been in the editing room suggests that raw footage exists of a confrontation so intense it would have permanently shattered Kody Brown's carefully crafted image as the benevolent patriarch. Did Logan finally challenge Kody about his blatant favoritism towards Robyn? Why would TLC hide Logan's truth just to save Kody's reputation? Today, we will unravel the mystery of those infamous lost tapes. This is the story of the deleted footage, the fight that was too real for reality TV, and the son who allegedly stood up for his family when no one else would. If you're tired of the carefully constructed narratives and want to explore the stories that happen when the cameras supposedly stop rolling, you've come to the right place. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're about to pull back the curtain on one of the biggest secrets in Sister Wives history. You won't want to miss a single second of this deep dive. To understand the magnitude of what was allegedly hidden, we first need to look at the character TLC meticulously built for us, Logan Brown, the good boy. From the very first season, Logan was presented not just as the eldest child, but as a third parent. He was the glue, the responsible one, the de facto leader of the kids. We saw him cooking breakfast for his younger siblings, waking them up for school, and generally shouldering a level of responsibility that went far beyond his years. While Kody was busy rotating between his 4 wives and managing the chaotic logistics of his plural family, Logan was in the trenches, providing the stability his siblings desperately needed. This wasn't just a helping hand. It was a parentified child taking on the duties his own father often seemed to neglect. The show's editors loved this narrative. It painted a picture of a functional, self-sufficient family where the older children naturally stepped up. Logan was the poster child for this ideal. He was calm, articulate, and rarely showed any sign of rebellion. He was the perfect son, the rock, the one who would carry on the family legacy. But beneath that calm exterior, the seeds of dissatisfaction were already being sown. It's normal for a teenage boy to rebel, to push back against authority. But in Logan's case, his rebellion wasn't loud or destructive. It was quiet, intelligent, and observational. He didn't throw tantrums. He asked pointed questions. He didn't break rules for the sake of it. He questioned the logic behind them. Think back to the early seasons, before the full weight of Robyn's influence had settled over the family. There were small, almost imperceptible moments where you could see the cracks in Logan's composed facade. A fleeting look of frustration when Kody would launch into one of his signature monologues. A subtle eye roll during a family meeting where Kody's rules seemed more about control than genuine family well-being. These weren't the actions of a defiant teenager, but of a young man who was beginning to see the man behind the patriarch. He was seeing a father whose ego often took precedence over his family's needs. One of the most telling examples and a fan favorite moment of clarity was the infamous pork tantrum in Hawaii. The family was being treated to a traditional luau by their generous hosts. When it was mentioned that pork would be the main dish, Kody, a man in his 40s with 18 children, threw a fit worthy of a toddler. "I'll just go hungry," he pouted, crossing his arms like a child. "What else will there be to eat other than pork? Poi poi? I'll skip that too, thanks." The wives, conditioned to manage his fragile ego, tried to placate him. But it was Logan who stepped in, not with anger, but with a calm, almost parental tone. He looked at his sulking father and asked, "What's the problem with you coming and not eating pork?" Kody, of course, sneered back, "No one asked my permission about this. Everyone can just piss off." In that moment, the dynamic was laid bare for all to see. Logan wasn't the child. He was the adult in the room, calmly trying to reason with an irrational man. His disgust was palpable, a silent judgment that spoke volumes. How could he respect a father, a supposed patriarch and spiritual leader who behaved with such monumental immaturity? This wasn't just about pork. It was about Kody's narcissism, his need to be the center of every decision, and his inability to handle the slightest inconvenience without a dramatic outburst. For Logan, who was constantly forced to be the mature one, this display must have been profoundly disillusioning. It was a clear sign that the family structure he was born into was fundamentally flawed. This was just one of many instances. Throughout the Las Vegas years, as the family navigated life in their 4 separate cul-de-sac homes, the divisions began to deepen. And with the arrival of Robyn and her children, the family's center of gravity started to shift dramatically. Kody's attention, resources, and time became increasingly focused on his new 4th wife. The other children, especially the older ones, began to notice. They saw their mothers being pushed to the side. They saw their needs being ignored in favor of Robyn's. And Logan, ever the observer, saw it all. He saw the financial strain that Robyn's desires placed on the family. He saw the emotional toll it took on his mother, Janelle, and his other mothers, Meri and Christine. We have to remember, Logan was Kody's firstborn son. For years, he was the heir apparent to this sprawling, chaotic kingdom. He was raised to believe in the principle, in the family, in the idea that they were all in this together. But as he watched Kody's blatant favoritism towards Robyn grow, that foundation began to crumble. The narrative TLC sold us was that Logan simply grew up and went off to college, choosing a life of privacy away from the cameras. And while there is truth to that, he and his now wife, Michelle, clearly value a normal life. The reports from behind the scenes suggest a more explosive reason for his departure. It wasn't just a quiet exit. It was the aftermath of a seismic confrontation, a point of no return. The good boy had finally had enough. The years of biting his tongue, of playing the dutiful son while his father's actions contradicted everything he was taught to believe in, had reached a boiling point. The stage was being set for a flashpoint, a moment so raw and so damaging that the network allegedly had no choice but to bury it, to lock it away in a vault and pretend it never happened. They chose to protect the king, even if it meant silencing the prince who dared to speak the truth. The obedient son was about to become the unsung hero, and that was a story TLC could never afford to tell. The flashpoint, the moment the dam of resentment finally broke, is believed to have occurred around the time of one of the most significant and controversial events in the family's history: Kody's legal divorce from his first wife, Meri, in order to legally marry Robyn and adopt her 3 children from a previous marriage. On the surface, the show presented this as a noble sacrifice on Meri's part, a selfless act to ensure Dayton, Aurora, and Brianna would have the security of Kody's name and be legally bound to the family. The narrative was one of unity, of a family making a tough decision for the greater good. But behind the tearful on-camera interviews and carefully worded explanations, a different reality was taking shape. For the original family, this wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was the ultimate betrayal. It was the legal and symbolic demotion of the first wife, and by extension, the original family structure. And Logan, now a young man in his late teens or early 20s, was old enough to understand the profound implications of this shift. A report, one that has circulated in the deepest corners of Sister Wives fan forums for years, claims to come from a former production assistant who was present during this tumultuous period. This source, who remains anonymous for fear of legal reprisal from the network, alleges that the family was gathered for one of their classic couch sessions sessions, ostensibly to discuss the logistics and emotional fallout of the divorce and remarriage. The cameras were rolling, capturing what was supposed to be another chapter in their journey. But the tension in the room was suffocating. Meri was trying to put on a brave face, Christine was visibly uncomfortable, and Janelle, ever the pragmatist, was attempting to remain neutral. Kody, however, was in full-on performance mode, pontificating about the importance of this decision and how it was a testament to their family's strength. According to the insider's account, Logan was sitting quietly, observing his father. He watched Kody perform for the cameras, minimizing the emotional devastation being felt by Meri, the woman who had been with him from the very beginning. He saw the subtle glances between Kody and Robyn, the private smiles that confirmed what everyone already knew. This was about them, not about the family as a whole. As Kody continued his monologue, dismissing the concerns of his other wives as mere growing pains, something inside Logan snapped. The story goes that Logan, in a clear and steady voice that cut through Kody's self-congratulatory speech, simply said, "I don't think you understand what you're doing." The room fell silent. Kody, stunned that his authority was being challenged, especially by his golden boy son, turned to him with a look of disbelief. "Excuse me?" he reportedly scoffed. And that's when Logan stood up. The good boy edit was over. What happened next is the scene that TLC allegedly buried so deep it's become the stuff of legend. Reconstructing from the whispers and theories, Logan wasn't yelling, not at first. His voice was filled with a cold, righteous anger that was far more terrifying than any teenage tantrum. He looked his father in the eye and said something to the effect of, "You are disrespecting our moms, all of them." He supposedly gestured towards Meri, pointing out the humiliation she was being forced to endure on national television, all while pretending it was her idea. He turned his attention to his own mother, Janelle, and Christine, speaking of how they had been relegated to the background, their opinions and feelings ignored as Kody built a new life centered entirely around Robyn. He called out the hypocrisy of preaching about a united family while actively creating a hierarchy, with Robyn and her children firmly at the top. Kody, as you can imagine, did not react well. His face, according to the source, turned purple with rage. This was not part of the script. His own son was dismantling his patriarchal facade in front of his wives, his other children, and the entire television crew. Kody allegedly shot back, "You don't know what you're talking about. This is a family decision and it's for the good of the children." Logan's response was the moment of no return. He is said to have taken a step forward, his voice finally rising, a wave of pent-up frustration from years of watching his family fracture. This is when he allegedly roared the words that have become the centerpiece of this entire theory. "Enough is enough." He didn't stop there. The confrontation escalated rapidly. Logan is said to have accused Kody of being so blinded by his infatuation with Robyn that he was willing to sacrifice the emotional well-being of the rest of the family. He might have pointed out the financial discrepancies, the way money always seemed to be available for Robyn's ventures while his other mothers struggled. He allegedly brought up the fact that Kody was spending all his time at Robyn's house, leaving his other children feeling abandoned. He wasn't just a disgruntled teenager. He was an advocate, a prosecutor laying out a case against a negligent king. The final blow came when Kody, his authority completely undermined and his ego shattered, resorted to the only tool he had left: tyranny. The insider report claims Kody pointed a shaking finger at his firstborn son and screamed, "This is my house. These are my rules. If you don't like it, you can get out." The threat was clear: fall in line or be exiled. It was a shocking, brutal display of authoritarian parenting, a father threatening to disown his son for speaking the truth. In that single moment, if it were ever aired, Kody would have ceased to be the quirky, sometimes bumbling patriarch. He would have become the villain of the entire series. Imagine that scene. Logan, the responsible, honorable son, standing his ground, defending his mothers against a narcissistic father. And Kody, the supposed leader, reveals his true colors as a petty tyrant who demands absolute obedience and banishes anyone who dares to question him. The power dynamic of the show would have been irrevocably shattered. The other children, who had been watching in stunned silence, would have seen their older brother become a hero. The audience would have rallied behind Logan, and Kody's credibility would have been destroyed years before his behavior in the later seasons did the job for him. The production crew was reportedly in shock. They knew they had captured television gold, but it was a gold so pure and so potent it could melt the entire foundation of the show. The cameras were quickly shut down, the family was separated, and a frantic damage control effort began. So why did this bombshell footage, if it exists, never see the light of day? The answer is simple and yet profoundly cynical. It would have ended the show as we knew it. The entire premise of Sister Wives, especially in those middle seasons, was the delicate balance of a functional plural family. It was aspirational television in a strange way. It showed a family navigating the complexities of their unique lifestyle, but always in the end coming together. They were the Browns, a united front against a world that didn't understand them. Logan's rebellion, his righteous indictment of his father, would have exposed that narrative as a complete and utter fraud. It would have revealed the ugly truth simmering just beneath the surface, that this wasn't a functional family, but a deeply dysfunctional one, held together by financial contracts and a shared public platform, all under the increasingly erratic rule of a single man. TLC and the show's producers had invested millions of dollars and years of work into building the Brown family brand. Kody Brown, for all his flaws, was the linchpin of that brand. He was the central character, the sun around which all the other planets revolved. Viewers needed to have some level of sympathy for him, or at least be intrigued by his journey. Airing the fight would have obliterated any chance of that. It would have painted him as a monster, a man who would threaten to cast out his own son for defending his mother's. The audience would have turned on him with a vengeance, and the show would have become unwatchable for many. It would no longer be a show about a plural family. It would be a show about an abusive patriarch and the family he terrorized. Furthermore, airing the footage would have created a hero that the show could not sustain. Logan would have become the de facto protagonist. Every scene with Kody would be viewed through the lens of that fight. The audience would be constantly waiting for Logan to speak up again, to challenge his father again. It would have completely upended the power structure that the show relied on. The network couldn't have the son of the patriarch be more popular and more respected than the patriarch himself. That's not how their narrative was designed to work. So they made a calculated business decision. They chose to protect their star and preserve their narrative. They hid the truth. The story of the fight of Kody's ultimatum was locked away in a digital vault. Logan's character arc was carefully managed. His eventual departure from the show was framed as a natural progression. The responsible son going off to college, building his own life, and choosing privacy over fame. It was a neat, tidy explanation that covered up a much messier and more painful reality. The network chose the good boy edit over the truth teller edit because it served their bottom line. The happy, plural family myth was more profitable than the ugly truth of its collapse. By burying that footage, TLC not only saved Kody's image for a few more seasons, but they also silenced the one person who had the courage to say what everyone else was only thinking. They hid Logan's truth, and in doing so, they allowed the dysfunction to fester, leading to the eventual implosion of the family that we are all witnessing today. The lost tapes don't just represent a single fight. They represent a crucial turning point where the truth was deliberately sacrificed for the sake of reality television. For years, the cover-up worked. The narrative of Logan, the quiet and successful son who simply chose a private life, was accepted by the majority of viewers. The show moved on, focusing on the ever-increasing drama surrounding Robyn, the catfishing scandal with Meri, and Christine's growing discontent. The legend of the lost tapes remained just that, a legend, a piece of fan fiction whispered about on Reddit threads and in Facebook groups. But the truth has a funny way of bubbling to the surface, especially when the container holding it begins to crack under pressure. And in the last few years, the Brown family container has not just cracked, it has shattered into a million pieces. The truth began to come out, not in a single explosive leak, but in a series of tremors from the very children who were raised to be silent. As the older Brown kids have grown up, moved out, and established their own lives away from Kody's direct control, they have begun to speak. And their stories, while not explicitly referencing the Logan-Kody fight, paint a picture of a family environment so toxic, so rife with favoritism and emotional neglect, that a confrontation like the one described in the lost tapes seems not only possible, but absolutely inevitable. The most prominent voice has been that of Paedon Brown, Christine and Kody's only son. In a series of shocking interviews, Paedon has pulled back the curtain on the man he calls his father. He has spoken of a relationship that is now non-existent. He has confirmed the long-held suspicion that Kody's favoritism towards Robyn and her children created a deep and painful rift in the family. Paedon has admitted that he and some of his siblings are not close with Robyn's kids, not out of any fault of the children themselves, but because of the hierarchical system their father created. Most tellingly, Paedon has described Kody's temper. He has spoken of a man who does not handle dissent well, a patriarch who demands loyalty but offers little in return. While Paedon has never, to public knowledge, detailed the specific fight involving Logan, he has essentially provided a character witness statement against his own father. He has described a man fully capable of the kind of narcissistic rage and authoritarian ultimatum that the Insider report alleges. Paedon's revelations are the smoke that validates the theory of a raging fire. Then there is Gwendlyn, another of Christine's children, who has used her YouTube channel to provide running commentary on the show, offering a priceless insider's perspective. Gwen has systematically dismantled the on-screen narrative, confirming that Robyn was, in fact, the head wife, and that her father's attention and resources were disproportionately funneled towards his fourth family. She speaks of the emotional toll this took on her mother and the other original family members. Gwen's commentary provides the context, the motive for Logan's alleged outburst. She describes the world that Logan was living in, a world where he would have watched his mothers be emotionally sidelined and disrespected on a daily basis. The frustration he must have felt, the protective instinct for his family. Gwen's stories make it all feel painfully real. She confirms the very injustice that Logan supposedly railed against. So when we look at the evidence provided by Paedon and Gwen, the lost tapes theory transforms from a wild fan rumor into a plausible, almost certain event. It perfectly explains the trajectory of Logan's life. Was his departure from the show truly just about a desire for privacy? Or was it a direct consequence of this secret war? It suggests the real reason Logan left was not simply to go to college, but to escape a father who had threatened to disown him for speaking the truth. The fight wasn't just an argument. It was an act of severance. It was the moment the illusion of family shattered for him. Kody didn't just threaten to kick Logan out of the house, he kicked him out of the fantasy. Logan, being the person he is, responsible, dignified, and protective, chose to walk away quietly. He didn't take to social media. He didn't write a tell-all book. He simply built his own life, a life based on stability, partnership with his wonderful wife, Michelle, and a clear separation from the circus he grew up in. His silence on the matter isn't a refutation of the theory. In many ways, it's a confirmation of his character. He fought his battle behind closed doors. He stood up for his mothers when it counted, not for the cameras. He didn't need public validation because he knew he had done the right thing. He is the unsung hero of the Sister Wives saga, the first one to truly stand up to the king and point out that he had no clothes. TLC buried the footage to save their show, but in doing so, they also buried the story of a young man's incredible courage. They denied him his hero's edit, opting instead to protect the crumbling image of a patriarch who had long since lost the respect of his own son. The family's recent implosion isn't a new development. It's just the final public chapter of a story that began years ago in a living room where a son told his father, "Enough is enough." And a television network decided that the truth wasn't worth the price of admission. Should TLC release that uncut footage? Do you want to see the real dynamic between Logan and Kody? Comment with hashtag #ReleaseTheTapes.